so many creative uses for crochet flowers. You've got the obvious ones. You can attach them to other projects. They're great for hats and headbands and bags and sweaters, and I mean the list goes on and on. But some of the more creative and fun ways that I like to use crochet flowers are sticking a magnet to the back of them, adding them to your refrigerator to brighten up the room. I love adding them to shadow boxes or using them as wall decor. And one of my favorites, especially this spring, just sprinkling them randomly throughout my home on tables and the mantle and the coffee table and the kitchen table. You know, just a fun way to bring some bright and pretty handmade blooms indoors for the season. Before we get to these gorgeous flowers, I want to let you know the free pattern for every single one of them is linked in the description below. You can find them all on my website, most of which have a step-by-step tutorial to walk you through the entire process. So we're kicking off this flower pattern list with one of my absolute favorite flowers of all time, this realistic 3D flower. And you can see why I love it, right? It's so eye-catching, it looks so realistic, and it's really, really fun to crochet. It uses a really interesting sort of technique, non-traditional, I guess you could say, to create this layered look. You actually use front loops and back loops, and it just makes the whole project really interesting to crochet and to work with. But it also has a nice little opening in the middle. You can add a button, you could add a bead or something like that. This one is great for adding a magnet to the back, like I was talking about, to add to your refrigerator. And you know what? It's not that difficult to crochet. So these 3 flowers were all crocheted with the exact same skein of yarn. That's why I love variegated yarn for this flower in particular, and especially really long sweeping color changes like you see with Red Heart Unforgettable yarn. So this colorway is called Heirloom. I just really love how you can take the same skein of yarn and crochet completely different flowers just based on where you start and stop the flower. This colorway is called Pearly. These were actually crocheted in the same color as well, but this colorway has far less color changes. It's a little bit more kind of tonal in nature, so we're kind of working with the same shades of color here. That's pretty much what you get with this particular colorway, but I wanted to show you what it looks like with more subtle color changes as well. So you can go really subtle, let the layers and the texture shine on this one, or you can go really bold and fun and crochet something with a lot of color. All right, flower pattern number 2 is another really cool 3D realistic looking flower, one of my absolute favorites, one of the first flowers I ever designed, so it's near and dear to my heart, but I still just really love it as a great everyday flower pattern. This one I call the Wagon Wheel flower. Now I'd have to say, hands down, this is probably one of the most interesting flowers that you'll ever crochet, especially on this list. That's why it had to make the greatest flower of all time list here, because it's just so cool in how it's crocheted. It's unique in how it comes together. It's somewhat challenging if you're new to reading crochet patterns, but it's a fun challenge and a great one to help you build your skills. So for this one, I really love using solid yarns. This is Peyton's Classic Wool Worsted, and I'll put the colors on the screen here. I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but I really love this yarn for their pastel shades, especially for springtime projects. It is 100% wool, so you can keep that in mind if you ever want to give this yarn a try. But I do like a wool yarn for this particular flower because of how well it holds its shape. So it's something that you can play around with. You can definitely crochet this flower with cottons, cotton blends, acrylics, anything like that, and it'll look just fine. But you know, maybe if you've got some wool to use, you don't have an allergy to it or anything like that, give it a try and see if you like the way this flower sort of lays and sits, how it holds its shape when you use a wool yarn versus some of your other fibers. So these flowers have a nice flat back to them, making them perfect for some of those more creative uses, putting them on the wall for decoration, using them in a shadow box, adding a magnet to them to add to your refrigerator, but they're also really great for sewing to other projects. If you're looking for a 3D flower to sort of pop out of a bag that you made or an adorable baby hat that you made, this is definitely a fun go-to. Flower number 3 is another absolute favorite in the community and near and dear to my heart, the popcorn stitch flower. This is one of the first flower designs that I ever made, and I just absolutely love it for that reason, but also because it has a lot of really great texture and just a fun look to it. This flower definitely has a 3D nature to it with popcorn stitches. They're beautifully textured, and so when you attach this to a project, it will stick out a little bit, but not quite as much as the first couple of flowers on our list. This one is especially great for adding to projects because you can sew directly around the flower and have nothing sort of loose or dangling from your project like you might have with either of those first 3D flowers that we talked about. Another really cool thing about this pattern is you can customize however many rounds of petals you want for your project. Now I have taken this down all the way to one single round of popcorn stitches, and I have actually crocheted a jumbo popcorn stitch flower and actually turned it into a hexagon as part of a blanket design for one of our past Warm Up America challenges. It was one of my absolute favorites. I've also incorporated this flower into a granny square. If you want to give that a try, it makes an absolutely darling pillow. Or you can go with a classic look where you've got 3 or maybe 4 rounds of popcorn stitch petals and attach it to a hat. It looks darling on a baby or a kid's hat. You can add them to bags, headbands, whatever you like. Now, as far as yarn goes for this flower, you can pretty much use any yarn that you have in your stash, and that's one of the great things about it. I personally really like kind of a smooth yarn that has more of a sheen to it. The sheen in the yarn catches the light a different way, and so it plays with the texture in the popcorn stitches, and it just looks absolutely beautiful. But definitely play around with the yarns that you have in your stash. I don't think you'll be disappointed with any yarn you choose. Flower number 4 is an absolute classic and very popular choice, the puff stitch flower. And this one I think was probably made most popular because some really creative crocheters have figured out a way that you can crochet these as you go, so you can create like a big fabric full of puff stitch flowers. Now, I personally haven't tried this. It's been on my bucket list for a while, but I just haven't quite gotten to it. But it looks absolutely stunning. So when you join them all together, you can create like a big floral pillow. If you're really super ambitious and you have a lot of scrap yarn, you can turn it into a blanket, maybe a baby blanket or something like that. But what I have found the most joy with these flowers is just crocheting them as I have a few scraps here and there and putting them around my house during the springtime. Now, I've used all sorts of yarn to crochet these flowers over the years. Some of my favorites were the smooth acrylic yarn, something again that sort of has a little bit of sheen and luster to it because the light catches it in the right way and it just makes it really pop and look beautiful. But I also really like it with that Peyton's Classic Wool Worsted I mentioned before, just because I simply love the colors in the spring. The next flower on our list is also one of the more interesting ones on this list, especially to crochet if you're looking for something completely different and unique. This one is it. We have the spiral crochet flower, and this one is crocheted completely in rows. You start with one small round just at the very beginning, and each one of the petals are crocheted individually, kind of adding to it. So it makes it really fun and interesting to crochet. And it's also a great option for when you want to have a flat flower, or you can layer them up if you need a little bit of 3D texture to your project. So I have 3 different sizes here. The pattern also includes 3 different sizes, so there's pretty much a size for any type of project that you would want to crochet. And I've done some creative things with these flowers as well. Obviously, attaching them directly to a project is perfect because they lay nice and flat, but they still have a little bit of texture to them and tons of visual interest because of how they come together. So they're great for bags and hats and headbands especially, maybe even adding to blankets or something like that. But another really fun and clever thing I did with these last year is I used a macrame cord and crocheted one of these flowers and added like a cork board to the back, not like a cork board, but like a piece of cork to the back, and I turned them into coasters. It was one of the most fun and practical projects that I have ever done before, and it was just a clever and creative use for this crochet flower to take it beyond just attaching it to another project. So if you want to give that a try, if you're looking for some really fun and pretty coasters for your home, I have a complete video where I did all of that. I'll link that in the description below if you want to check it out. I'll share that pattern with you as well, in addition to the pattern that has all 3 of these sizes. Now, as far as yarn goes, for this spiral flower, again, I've tried just about every single yarn that you can think of over the years, and I honestly haven't found one that I didn't like. Now, this yarn, I just absolutely adore. This is Shapejust Stonewashed XL. I know I don't have the proper accent to be able to say that correctly, but it is one of my favorite yarns. I absolutely love how we have some color, but then we also have, you know, like a stone-washed kind of look to it. We've got the white pops in there. Makes it look really, really interesting with this flower. Adds another element of texture and visual interest. But definitely try this with any medium weight yarn that you have in your stash. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Now, the next flower on our list here is perfect if you're a complete and total beginner. I mean, it's great if you're not a total beginner, but this flower is one you can absolutely crochet if you're brand new to crochet. It's one of my favorites. It's beautiful. It doesn't look like it would be a beginner project, and you can do so many cool things with it. So my beginner crochet rose is crocheted using rose, which makes it really easy and fun to crochet. So you basically take one long piece and you roll it into a rose shape. And in doing so, you can create roses that look a little bit different, you know, more lifelike. You can wrap it a little bit tighter so they're more of a tighter, like new bloom, or you can also kind of roll them a little more loosely, let the petals kind of fan out a little bit until they look like big full roses. You can create like a beautiful crochet bouquet of roses. It would be great for a Mother's Day gift. Great for any gift, actually, or just to have on your table to look at, and you don't have to worry about watering them or forgetting to water them like I often do. Like most of the flowers on this list, I have tried a variety of yarns with this pattern over the years. It's one of the first ones I ever designed as well, and I really haven't found one that I didn't like. I particularly love using a cotton or a cotton blend because I like how the yarn or how the fibers just work and feel and how they kind of mold to the shape that you want. I think that's really cool. It works great with acrylic yarns, but I've also used 100% superwash merino wool and it worked out really well. So experiment with whatever yarn you have available. Again, it's one of those flowers. I think it'll turn out great no matter which yarn you use. Now with our next flower, the name kind of says it all. I like to call this the easy crochet flower, and it is by far one of the easiest flowers that you'll ever crochet. Now this flower is super quick to crochet. It uses a variety of different stitches of different heights to help create the petal shape, and you can use basically any yarn you want for this one. That's why it's one of my favorites. Any little bits of scraps that you have, turn it into one of these easy crochet flowers, sprinkle them throughout your home, add them to gifts, put them in, you know, baskets or gift baskets. I mean, you can do so much with these little flowers. They're great for your refrigerator too. I really like them for that. So all of these flowers I crocheted with Peyton's Classic Wool Worsted. Again, just love the spring color palette that they have. But again, it's one of those flowers that you can use literally any yarn that you have in your stash. And this one is especially easy to change the weight of the yarn. Now you'll have to use a different hook size, one that coordinates with the thickness of yarn that you're using. But yeah, if you want to create a really tiny flower, I've actually done this before. I don't know if I have any pictures of it because I gifted them, but I used a thread, a crochet thread. It was number 8 or 10 or something like that. I used a really small crochet hook in this pattern and I hot glued them to little hair clips, and they were absolutely adorable. So you can make them really small. You can crochet them with a bulky or a super bulky weight yarn if you like, obviously choosing a larger hook size to make that happen, to make bigger flowers. But you know, the sweet spot for me is a medium weight yarn. I really like them in Peyton's Classic Wool Worsted, again, because of just the colors that we have here, but they work great with smooth yarn, and they're especially adorable with variegated yarns. I've been crocheting and designing flowers for well over a decade now, and these are by far my absolute favorites, but they're not the only flower patterns that I have available for free if you want to dive in on my website. I'll have a link to where you can find all of the flower patterns on my website, as well as individual links to each of these flowers so you can find them and get started on them right away. Now I do have one bonus project. It's not a flower, but it is a really, really fun and creative way to use up scrap yarns in the springtime. For this, we have this adorable crochet butterfly. Now this is another one of those patterns that I've tried all sorts of yarns. I actually used that Stonewashed XL yarn before. I've used the same heirloom Red Heart Unforgettable yarn for these ones. I've used a really kind of speckly yarn that was a cotton blend. I mean, you just can't go wrong with these. It's really fun and interesting to crochet, so you definitely want to give it a try if you maybe don't need more flowers in your life, but you still want to crochet something quick and fun for spring. I'll have this one linked in the description as well. Now let me know in the comments which one of these flowers or butterfly you're going to try to crochet next in the comments below. I can't wait to hear what your favorites are. Happy hooking, and I'll see you in the next one.